man I ever knew.
Okay.
Richard boy.
Okay.
Anyway, speaking of
the
great
greatest
men,
game, the greatest game we ever knew, we get to talk about on a daily basis, and this is no exception as we turn our attentions to Week 9. And you want to bring up a coach that was a little disgruntled. You want to bring up a guy that was a little heated under the collar in the waning moments of a loss on Saturday. And I just remind you that everybody has, their tipping point, their boiling point, and post game is no time to be judging a man.
Oh, I'm not judging him. I'm with him. I agree with everything that he's saying. Officiating in this sport has become complete and utter horse crap. It is nonsense. How many times? Every week, every Monday, we get on the air and say they effed it up again.
I actually went back and looked at the play that he's disgruntled about. And he has a claim, but it isn't as egregious as what we saw in Austin, Texas.
Oh, I thought it was worse. I thought the kid from Wake was blanketed on him.
Well, he was. He
was like making
early.
Love to him. I mean, it was uncomfortable. It was like, hey,
he grabbed him early.
Calm down, pal.
Anyway, you want to play the sound.
If this was a Church of Christ school, they'd send you to detention for getting that close. My goodness. And you say that's not a foul? I mean, he was. He was up next to him.
You have gone past the pony point, and it's a mark that is uniquely high, higher than most broadcasts, and so I'm asking you to stop now.
I'm just telling you, it was a little unsavory contact. In fact, it was a lot of unsavory contact. I agree with Jim. But Kirby Smart had his...
I'm not disagreeing with Jim. I'm just saying I've seen worse. That's all.
Okay, sure. Everybody go back, watch the clip at the end of the game, and you tell me if that was more or less egregious than what happened in the third quarter of the Texas-Georgia game.
The Texas-Georgia game was egregious not because of the call, but because they marked the call off and then wiped it out and went back the other way. That's what's egregious about that. There was contact. It was down the field. It was come see, come saw. No one really had an advantage because of the contact. Should have never been a flag anyway. And yet, once you throw it and have determined that it's defensive pass interference, how did they mark it off? They marked it off on defense, right? They marked it off against Texas. So that's the call. You don't get to just all of a sudden now come back and after marking it off, after looking at the replays and seeing bottles hurl on the field, changing the call. You don't get to do that. You butchered the call. You had a chance not to butcher it. If you don't want to mark it off, if you think you've not got the right call, go talk to the head official, pick up the flag and wave it and say no call. But you don't get to mark it off and then have this, conscious alert that says, oh, I'm taking it back. All that does is create all sorts of conspiracy theories, and we can't have that in officiating.
No, we can't. And in particular case, this is UConn, who's an independent, taking on Wake Forest of the ACC.
In stores, by the way.
What's that?
This game's in stores. This game's in Connecticut.
With an ACC crew.
Yes.
And at the end of the game, UConn is driving. It's 23-20, yes. Mm-hmm. With a chance. And instead of a big play or a big pass interference, nothing is called. Game is over. Wake ends up winning. And listen to Jim Mora's explanation for what happened in the aftermath.
I'm proud of them for fighting back. We've got to make sure that we put ourselves in a position where it doesn't come down to one play, where an ACC team makes a horse call against an independent. And that's up to us to play better at the start of the game so it doesn't come down to that call, which was holding and PI. And that's what I told him, and we'll come back and we'll fight. So it's on us to play better earlier. But it'd sure be nice if it was a level playing field.
Jim, I mean, obviously the way it came down is not...
Yeah, it was a hold and a PI. Hold and a PI.
Did you get an explanation from anyone?
Here's your explanation. ACC versus independent. There's your explanation, Dom. It's pretty simple.
Pretty effing simple, Jim. I love that, and I agree. Listen, I'm not saying Jim Phillips is a crook. I'm not saying he's cheating. Here's what I will say. I've had an eyebrow raised towards Jim all season long. I've got no proof. But why does this keep happening weekly in that league? Why do we keep having controversial decisions where we're like, hold on a second, and that one, I'm sorry. Allie, did you watch the play? Did you see it? It's egregious as hell to me. I mean, he's blanketed on the guy. I mean, you would have thought if you would have seen two people holding like that out in public, you'd think absolutely they're a couple. They love romance.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, there was contact.
Give me your thoughts.
There was contact. I'm of the school, and I'm sure there are listeners out there, that when the game is in question, that it has to be egregious for you to call.
That's egregious.
That it wasn't. It was
yes,
not
it
egregious.
is. I'm watching it right now.
He sat at the sticks. It was 4th and 8, and the guy collisioned, and there was contact, no question. But I'm okay with no call there on the final play of the game. I would have been okay had he called it, but I'm okay.
I mean, it looks like he's trying to nibble his ear, dude. What are you talking about? These right
that's
up.
not true. Now when
Riley,
when the New York Liberty, the women's basketball team gets just a phantom call at game's end and takes the championship away from the Minnesota Lynx, now I'm sitting there going, how are you calling that? You're making that up. That girl's standing there with her arms straight up in the air. That's getting involved. Have
you seen it, Allie? Your thoughts on the play?
I watched it, and if that were a Maryland football game when I was a student, I probably would have used very similar language that we just bleeped out from Jim Mora's press conference.
I think it's upsetting. Like bad. I stare at it and I'm shocked that it
easily could have been called pass interference. I'm not arguing that. I've seen worse, though.
I'm glad you've seen worse, because that, to me, Jim Mora going off on that, I have sympathy, I have empathy, and I agree we need, and here's the point.
And this has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with. It
needs to be universally run. We need to have officials.
Yes,
we don't need an ACC crew working that game, Rick. That's the point.
We can't have Jim Mora worrying about where the officials are from. We can't have that. That's bad for the game. We need just a standardized officiating body, whether it's run by the NCAA, whether it's run by the College Football Playoff. We need a standardized deal where it's not going back to replay in different confines around the world that have a vested interest in the outcome. The SEC will want SEC schools to do well, and they'll know what they need. And so will be the ACC, and so too will be the Big 12 and on down the road. That's just the way it is. And so we need to take that away so that the fan base, those that pay the freight, whether almost every cost out there is paid by the fans, whether they're labeled as fans or boosters, they're paying. They deserve the product to be as conspiracy-free as possible.
I call conspiracy. I call nonsense. I call Jim Mora needs to be on a platform. I want him screaming to the masses. Riley, did you see it?
Allie did send it to me. I have seen it now. I agree with you. He's all over him.
All over him. I mean, that is illegal in most states. It's wild to me. When I saw it, I was like, wow, I'm kind of shocked, Ricks. If you've seen worse, then the guy should be put in jail. I mean, honestly.
He's going to sit at the sticks. He's going to sit at the sticks. There was a illegal procedure penalty right before on 4th and 3. So now it's 4th and 8. The defensive back is in man coverage. He's going to sit at the sticks because they're going down and running a hook route for the first down. And he's going to sit there. And so as they run into each other, now he's on the guy's back. And I would agree, the ball is thrown outside. So as he tries to reach for the ball, you can see some tugging. There's no question that there's some hand-to-hand combat and some grabbing right there. And it could have easily been called. All I'm pointing out is I have seen worse.
So you don't think Jim Mora's got a point?
Yes, I do think
he's
got a point.
Protecting the ACC.
He's making the same point as I'm making. You don't need this to be a series of events that creates the implication that there's a vested interest on the part of the officials based on where they're from and who they work for. You just don't need that. And in that situation, and literally, when you do these non-conference games, and obviously it's a non-conference game for Wake, and all games are non-conference for Connecticut. When you put these games together via contract, you also contract as to who's going to officiate. So like for instance, if I do a home and home with Texas while I was at UCLA, when we go to Texas, so too will Pac-12 officials. And when Texas came to UCLA and played in the Rose Bowl, they brought with them Big 12 officials. Just to keep the game, just so that everybody feels good about you're not going to get a home field advantage. And think about that's a concern, right? When Notre Dame travels, all these deals are negotiated as to which officiating crew.
Which is why it's got to be universal.
Yes. We're at a point where the money is such that it needs to be universal so that we're not having these conversations where Jim Mora isn't using expletives to, voice his disgust over what he thought was a problem based on alliance.
I agree with you, Jim.
Egregious call.
I got you, Jim. The previous coach at UConn might have left you with a soft team, but I got you, Jim. I do.
Okay.
You like that inside joke?
That was a shot across the bow. Yes.
It was not. It was a joke.
I heard.
It was a loving joke.
It's not necessary.
Oh, stop it. I said it with love.
I'm not hurt. I'm just sitting there going, you're taking this into an arena that it doesn't belong.
Well, I don't know if you've known me for a long time, but that's kind of what happens with me. We'll start in appropriate arena, and then, like a scoundrel in Amsterdam, we end up in the abyss.
Scoundrel in Amsterdam.
100%. All right. Quarterback news. Jackson Arnold, the red shirt, is gone.